this video, we're going to move towards marketing. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what are the methods that are currently being used by a lot of different agencies to reach their targeted and desired customers. We're also going to ask some critical questions, specifically around how are expertise quadrant agencies marketing? What are the things that they do and what do they do really well? And this will set us up for the next video very, very nicely. First, I want you to take a moment, and it might be a good point to pause and ask yourself these two questions that you see on this slide. How are you currently getting your customers into your pipeline? What methods are you using? And then, are there methods that seem to work better than others? Are there some that, for some reason or another, bring a disproportionate amount of business? So take a moment and ask yourself that. In the research, what we found is that there's lots of different methods. In today's environment, there's no shortage of ways to connect with your customers. We found things like print advertising. We saw direct and electronic content, TV and advertising in the more traditional media sense. We also saw referrals and word of mouth. People were going to events and trade shows to do face-to-face interaction. And I couldn't not say social media. It seems like that's the buzzword and on everyone's mind these days, and people are trying to figure it out. These are all the different methods that we saw used, and there was a time and a place for all of them. First, I want us to take a look at what are you using? I want you to sit down and I want you to say, how much money am I spending in each one of these buckets? And if there's a bucket missing, because this isn't exhaustive, we saw others, but these were the major ones. If there is a bucket missing, what amount of money you're spending in that? And then I want you to take a step back and I want you to think to yourself, if this is the amount of money that I'm spending within this marketing medium, what do I see as the return that I'm getting from sales conversions? So in the top bar there, you'll see where you can place your dollar value. And underneath that, adding up to 100, start to put in some of these percentages. And then I want you to stop and I want you to say, you know what, this is kind of weird. Look for those things that are outliers. Find out, where am I spending a lot of money and maybe getting a small amount of return? Or maybe there's areas that you're not investing any money, but you're seeing tons of sales conversions come from that. You should start to identify those after going through this exercise. And then I also want you to think, how has this evolved? And how has this changed from previous years? Where did you used to spend your money? Where are you now spending it, as you can see? And where do you need to be spending it? And that's where we're going to start to focus on with the rest of this video. And then let's start to look at the future. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to look at some survey results. So one of the questions that we asked was, choose the methods, so the marketing methods, that you go to market with and the perceived value of each. There's two parts to this question, so let's break apart each one quickly. On this chart, if you see red, that means that the responses were, I do not utilize this method. If you see any other color, it means that they were. Okay, so that was the first question. The second question was, what is the value if you use that method? What do you perceive that value to be? And you'll see that there's three colors. If it's yellow, it means that it was occasionally valuable. If you see that it's light green, it means that it's regularly valuable. And if it's dark green, it means that it was extremely valuable. Now, let's take a look at this results. What you see here is that overwhelmingly, responses said that referrals and word of mouth were the most valuable way to go to market and to reach your customers. So much so that it dwarfs the next largest one, which was email. Now take a look at some of these other things. You're seeing that people don't use billboards as much anymore. People have moved away from television and radio advertisements for the most part. And again, one of the things that we'll talk about in the next video is it may just be how you're using the mechanism, because you always want to be using those mechanisms that your target audience is really going to want that they read or that they use. That's what you're going to want to focus your efforts on and focus your resources on. But just look at that referrals and word of mouth for a second. Now let's look to another question. In this question, we said, in sales, what strategy do you most use for success? There's a clear, weighted side to this chart. It's all around relationships. And we've talked about that in the segment on the value pyramid. Relationships are the thing that people are using the most in order to generate more sales and to convert more sales. And so when you take these two charts together and you think about this, in order to get sales, it's mostly based on relationships. It's mostly being able to be proactive on needs identification and desire identification. It's about educating on what are the new opportunities. And then you look at the previous chart and then you say, it's all of the market value is coming from referrals and word of mouth. And what do you have there? It's all about people. So I would ask you, how are you connecting with people? Are you treating them as human beings? Are you treating them as friends, as colleagues, as peers? Or are you treating them as something that you feel like you can just shoot out random messages to and hope to get that same level of connection and to move up that value pyramid? It's a critical question that you need to ask yourself. Now, I want you to think about, how do you think these different agencies, these top agencies, and these agencies that were able to move themselves into the expertise quadrant, how do you think that they were marketing? How do you think that they were showing their knowledge or their insight? How do you think they were breaking down complexity? How do you think they were communicating their value and then being able to get commercial value from that, or being able to generate more revenue and profitability from that? How do you think they were doing that? You should probably pause here and you should ask yourself that question. What we found in the research was that there were really 4 things. First and foremost, what we saw from top agencies is they were deliberate and measured on the spend to conversion. So that chart that we had you break out, they were very specific on, I'm going to put my money in the places that are going to generate the most revenue or the most opportunity to generate conversions and generate that revenue. Also, they were very deliberate on making sure that that spend was going in ways that would move them up the value pyramid. Second, they were focused on cutting through the noise in the market. So far, we've only been talking about the travel industry. Just think about your inbox on a normal day. Are you only getting travel-related messages, or are you getting messages from other industries? How many other businesses out there are constantly vying for your attention at every single moment of the day? So these agencies were doing more to cut through that noise, not just travel-related noise, but all of the noise that existed in the market. They also sought continuation up the value pyramid, as I've mentioned. They focused less on transactions and the products and services and more on the experiences, more on the quality, more on the customization that was available. And lastly, they embraced new approaches to connection. You may be thinking to yourself, that means social, because that's the latest fad. That's the latest trend that you see in the market. That's not what I mean with this. What I'm talking about is they embraced, after knowing who their desired audience was, the mediums that those people really wanted to be connected on and how they wanted to be connected. If that's social, then they figured social out. If that was simply moving from something like email to phone calls, they were willing to invest that time and effort to do it. It was whatever would best resonate with their customer. To summarize what we've talked about here, we've talked about a couple of things. We talked about the different mediums that are at your disposal, and we walked through an exercise of determining how much are you spending and what are those conversions looking like on the other side. And then we also spent some time then breaking that apart and asking ourselves, well, if we were going to be in the expertise quadrant, or we were going to have independent agents in the expertise quadrant, what does that need to look like? Or how would they do it? And we talked about the 4 principles that emerge: being deliberate and measured, cutting through the noise, continuation up the value pyramid, and embracing new opportunities. Take a moment, and before you finish this video or before you go on to something else, ask yourself how you could start to embrace those 4 things and bring those into your business. Thank you.